Hey gamers! If you clicked on this video, you're probably deliberating on whether or not you should start Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail in 2023. I'm here to break that down for you as someone who started both games just this year. One big problem I see with these MiHoYo titles is that a lot of the how to get started guides out there are very technical and try to give you detailed guides on how to avoid screwing up your account. But for someone like me who was mostly interested in playing these games because they looked fun, I found those videos a bit daunting and hard to understand. In this video, I'm hoping I can give you a decent feel of what each experience is like without getting too far into the weeds. I also hope to compare and contrast them in an easy to understand way to help you make a decision on which game you want to play. And since I am also new to both games, I won't be giving very much advice in terms of best teams or best builds. So for that, I would suggest watching a different video. But before we get started, just a reminder that I make video essay style content once a month, and I make these shorter commentary style videos, which you will see recommended on your screen now, every single week. So if that is of interest to you, please remember to like this video and subscribe. With all of that out of the way, let's answer the question. Which MiHoYo game should you jump into in 2023? Let's start with probably the most famous of the MiHoYo flagship titles, which is Genshin Impact. If you haven't somehow heard of Genshin Impact, it is an action-adventure RPG developed by Chinese developer MiHoYo, now under subsidiary HoYoverse. Genshin released in 2020, which was perfect timing considering the amount of people stuck in their homes at the time. Being developed for multiple platforms, including mobile, Genshin has a lot of mobile game elements, such as the inclusion of a gacha or randomized loot box system for obtaining different characters and equipment. Don't let that feature paint your opinion of the game though. It's possible to play through Genshin as a purely free-to-play player, and it's possible to get through all the content without spending a single dime. Monetization features aside, let's talk about one of the main features of Genshin Impact: the story. Genshin Impact begins with a pair of siblings, one of which you will choose as your playable character. These siblings get separated after a battle with an unknown god. This god warps the player character, the Traveler, and presumably their sibling to the land of Teyvat. Teyvat is comprised of 7 nations to explore as you try to find your missing sibling. You are joined by a sprightly character named Paimon, and a host of other characters that are met over the course of the story. Without revealing too much, because I want you to experience it yourself, the story of Genshin is serviceable, with all character motivations being fairly understandable and straightforward. For context, as of writing, I have explored the opening region of Mondstadt and completed the first story arc, and am in the middle of the second. So far, the story hasn't blown me away by any means, but the characters are well written and fun, and there is a greater overarching mystery that keeps the player's interest in the plot alive. I've heard the story only gets better over time, but so far I have nothing to be disappointed with, as the story is fun and doesn't take itself too seriously. As for gameplay, Genshin is an action RPG. So the main draw is the combat. And for a mobile title, the combat is some of the best I've ever played in the space. Action games on mobile tend to feel half-baked or clunky, but Genshin plays exceptionally well, and it almost feels like the natural way to play. I have heard that performance on mobile can be spotty in later areas, so keep that in mind. On PC, controller feels like the optimal way to play, and I would also suggest remapping some of the buttons, as the default button layout can feel foreign, especially in comparison to other action titles. The game does a great job of explaining how to play, so without going into too much detail, the combat system of Genshin is unique. You can switch between your characters in the middle of combat, and all of your characters have various elemental effects that are stackable, meaning if you hit the enemy with Cryo, the ice element, then hit them with Electro, the electricity element, the enemy will become supercharged and cause enemies around them to get shocked. Enemies have their own predispositions as well, so an ice enemy will automatically become supercharged when hit with an electro attack. In addition, the environment can affect combat as well. Like if your enemies are standing in a pool of water, electro is more effective. The creativity this elemental system creates makes combat extremely engaging, and some of the challenges in the game are bested only by using it to defeat enemies as swiftly as possible. The world of Genshin is perhaps the second strongest aspect of the game. Genshin is often called a Breath of the Wild clone, but really the only similarities are the cel-shaded graphics and the fact that you can glide and climb. Otherwise, the world of Genshin is truly its own immersive, beautiful land, and exploring hasn't gotten old for me in the slightest. Each region has its own unique flavor to enjoy, side quests to do, and secret treasures to find, and that gameplay loop, along with the fun combat, is what keeps me coming back. Alright, we've talked about miHoYo's behemoth enough. Let's talk about their newest title, Honkai Star Rail. Honkai, by contrast, is a turn-based RPG, but not in the most traditional sense. We'll get into the combat later, but to keep things organized, let's talk about the story of Honkai Star Rail. We begin the game by following two interesting characters, Kafka and Silver Wolf, as they sneak into a space facility to presumably steal something, Phantom Thieves style. The pair, once helping us understand how to play the game, eventually find what they are looking for, a Stellaron. We don't know too much about what a Stellaron is at the moment, but for now, along with the Stellaron, they awaken a host for the mysterious object. Us, the main character. We have no memory aside from remembering Kafka's face vaguely, and the plot of the game involves us searching for answers about our past and regaining our lost memories. We can't remember anything in this space station though, so we are invited to board the Astral Express, an intergalactic train filled with a host of characters who go from planet to planet repairing the Star Rail by sealing any rogue Stellaron in its path. From what I've played, I would say in contrast to Genshin, Star Rail's story is its strongest feature. Since this review is spoiler-free, you'll have to take my word for it that the story in this free-to-play mobile title is AAA in quality. I thought it would be another generic romp through a fantasy land, but in space, and instead I was greeted with an at times complex story, and the characters had more depth, bringing it closer to something like Final Fantasy than Genshin Impact. If you're looking for a more story-driven experience, let your decision be made here. Honkai is the way to go. As far as combat goes, if you've ever played a modern turn-based game, this might sound familiar. Instead of the turn order being fixed at the beginning of combat based on each character and enemy's stats, the turn order can change over the course of an encounter depending on buffs or debuffs applied to yourself and enemies. In addition, we see the return of elemental reactions like we have in Genshin, although instead of each enemy having a singular type, each enemy has multiple weaknesses. Another difference between Genshin's combat system and Honkai's is the break system. Similar to some other turn-based titles, each enemy has both a shield bar as well as an HP bar. It is easier to break this shield bar with attacks corresponding to an enemy's weakness. This makes combat feel like a more active process. Instead of just mindlessly auto-attacking in each encounter, you have to make strategic decisions about which character's abilities to use on what enemies. Additionally, each character has an ultimate ability that, once charged, can be used on anyone's turn, including the enemies. Thus, it can be a strategy of its own to decide whose ability to use when. When comparing to Genshin, although the turn-based combat of Honkai Star Rail can be exhilarating in its own right, I would have to give the edge to Genshin. I still feel like Genshin's combat system feels more thrilling to play, but obviously whether you're looking for an action-based or turn-based game will matter more when you are trying to decide which game to play. Lastly, Honkai's exploration. Honkai's worlds are mostly a series of glorified dungeons, so exploration mostly comes down to going down the less beaten path for an extra chest or to find a secret cutscene. Major cities have more of an open world feel, but aside from more in-game lore, books, or the occasional chest, there isn't much to the exploration from what I've seen. So once again, comparing to Genshin, if you want a more streamlined experience and aren't looking for open world exploration, Honkai is for you. Otherwise, Genshin might be more up your alley. To wrap things up, here's the summary of my thoughts if you still can't decide which game to play. If you want a better story, turn-based combat sounds fun, and you don't mind a lack of exploration, Honkai Star Rail is the game to play. Otherwise, despite Genshin coming out 3 years ago, I still think it's the more engaging of the two overall. Although the story can feel rudimentary at times, the gameplay loop it presents is just so fun and addicting, and I can't see it getting old in the endgame either. There's a reason why this game is as popular as it is. And personally, although I'm going to continue playing both, I'm going to stick with Genshin for the long haul. Let me know if you want an update video once I've gotten up to date on each game's content. I can do a final comparison once reaching endgame if that would be of interest to you all. Otherwise, that's pretty much the video. So go follow me on Kick. I've been streaming on there for a few weeks now. And it's been great, and especially with everything happening on Twitch recently, I am looking to stream on there more. But I am still doing some streams over on Twitch where I will be streaming both Genshin and Star Rail, and some of my achievement hunting that I've been doing in the Devil May Cry series. So if any of that sounds of interest to you, follow me on those platforms. Until next time, I'm Scarlett Rainn, the gaming vampire, and I hope I was able to help you decide which game you wanted to play. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this, and I'm signing out. Peace.